back of the note-taking sheet is the bibliography form. So before we ever started, we did the bibliographic citation. And then I talked about the idea of main ideas and details, and that today we were going to take notes on the details of the story, and then at the end of the story determine what the main idea was. And so on that note-taking form, I would read the first couple of prompts, so it would give them a purpose for reading, and then I read aloud, but the kids would follow along, and then we would begin reading, and at the bottom of every page, then I would say, did you hear any relevant information that would fit? No? Okay, well then, let's read another page and see if we can't find information that fits the notes. So that was the first week, and then the second week, we reviewed the idea of main ideas and details, and then we went to abcia.com and did a word cloud, and that's in your packet too. And you can see they're up there on the bulletin board, everybody's different word clouds. And then at the end of that lesson, I asked kids to identify the main idea. And because in our notes, the word Indian was used more than once, it was more predominant in the word cloud. We did an oral evaluation, strengths and weaknesses, what we could do better next time. And then the third lesson, a real weakness of mine has been using primary sources. And some of you that have been to that Library of Congress class, I have not attended. And so I really needed to step up primary sources. So I handed the kids these reproductions of photos, and I think it's in your packet as a PowerPoint. And I asked the kids to consider the questions, and I think, Ginger, this came from you. What is going on in this picture? What you see that makes you say that, and what you wonder about this photograph? And so then I gave them time just to consider it individually, and then I projected the PowerPoint on the screen and asked the kids to share aloud. So, who has this photo, and Joey, what's going on in this picture? And it went really quick. I thought I might get bogged down with that, but the kids really, because they had that minute to think about it, they really could respond quickly. And
Can I interrupt for a second? So have you done primary sources, met your primary sources with your kids in the past? I mean, was it their first?
No, it wasn't their first exposure, but I don't do units on primary sources like some people do.
Okay.
But prompted by Trails 9, asking about primary sources, I mention it more often and explain that when we're reading something or when we're doing something, what might be a primary source. But this is the first time they actually held something, even though it was a reproduction. So then after the kids all did that analysis of the pictures, I asked if they had an idea of what they might have in common, predicting what they might have in common. In one class, one kid did say that he thought they were about Jim Thorpe, but the other ones, oh no, it's about Indians, or it's about kids, or, they couldn't find that common thread. And so, based on Andre's recommendation, Joseph Bruchac, the author of that book, was inspired by Jack Gladstone, the songwriter, whose children attended our school. And he wrote a song, Bright Path. And so I asked the kids to, examine their picture, and then I played that song, and the idea being they had to identify where it came in the sequence of Jim Thorpe's life.
Oh, cool.
So it gave
That's
purpose
great.
to their viewing. And they needed to listen to the lyrics of the song because the pictures don't really go in chronological order. They do at the first part of Jim Thorpe's life, but then there's kind of a flashback at the end recalling some of his highlights. And so we watched the YouTube video, Bright Path, and then the kids, I was going to have them put his timeline of his life on big paper, but you can see I don't have a place to hang big paper, so we did a clothesline with clothespins. And so then they created a timeline, beginning, middle, and end of his life. And then we compared, and this was an extra long lesson because as soon as we got the clothesline done, time was wrapping up. So I took some extra time to read this Bright
Oh, a
Path.
new version.
And we compared and contrasted, one by a Native American author and one by a
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I haven't
Caucasian
either. Yeah.
author. And then I wrote down there Common Core standards, and I focused mainly on main ideas and details, sequencing, identifying information from text being read aloud, which we hadn't practiced up until that point, to work with listening comprehension.
So
And
one
that's
thing that
right.
you could add for next year is if you could get a copy of the music from Jack Gladstone to have with them as you're listening to it, they could read along. And then that is also a primary source.
So I
They
have
could
that.
use.
I have that CD, and so how,
If you
Are you
have
suggesting?
a copy of the music
Yeah.
notes, like the.
You mean the lyrics?
The lyrics
Yeah.
and the music notes where it's written out, if you could find a copy of that.
It's on his
Oh.
website. His website has all
like the
lyrics.
score, the musical
Yes, music-
score?
Yes. So they have that in front of them as they're listening to it.
Oh, that's a great idea.
We even took notes off of the music because the music